when you find a bird that is uncommon or rare, you're, in some respects, you're kind of faced with a personal choice as to whether, one, you tell anyone about it, two, whether or not you want to then formalise that claim. And every single county in England, at least, probably every single county in England, Scotland and Wales, has what's known as a rarities committee, a county rarities committee in most cases, I'm sure probably all of them. And then there is a national rarities committee. And their jobs, if you see it this way, is to judge whether or not you did actually see the species you claim. Now, back in the olden days, so back in the 80s and well before that, we didn't have the luxury of digital cameras and phones and all this amazing communications to text and WhatsApp images and all this other incredible stuff. Back in them days, if you were on your Todd and you saw a rare bird and you didn't have a camera, you basically had to use the notepad that I've been talking about. So I was doing the old school way of doing things. Admittedly, this pad is actually quite a large thing to carry. The older little square A5 type things, or whatever their size thing is, much easier. Most people adopted those or some other type. But making notes and looking at a bird, perhaps that's an art and a skill in itself. But in a way, it doesn't really matter whether you're able to do great pictures. Ultimately, if you wanted to formalise your claim, as I said, of this bird you think you saw or know you saw in your own mind, you will have to go through a formal process of filling in a form and sending it to your county recorder. And like I say, I think every county has its rarity committee chair and team. Now, at this time, I'm going forward into my notepad here. On the 6th of July 1983, I was having a late morning walk, 9 till 11:20 according to this, and I put down in my notes, possible Gadwall plus 4 young, sent description to Peter Stanley, the then Rarities Committee Chair. And he was very kind. I'll show you the letter he sent back to me, dated the 27th of July, so very formal. Here we go. Dear Fraser, many thanks for details of the duck and young at Dinton. Our Records Committee will consider it in due course, but it certainly looks like Gadwall. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the whole detail, but as a result of this, I was put in touch with what became an incredibly good friend of mine, Trevor. And Trevor was either asked to go down to Sandford Lake, where I'd seen these birds, to verify it, or he just went down off his own back. I really don't know the backstory there. He will probably tell me after he watches this video. For me, I absolutely knew they were Gadwall. He confirmed they were Gadwall. And in terms of how people treat you once you found something. Now, Gadwall isn't rare. Gadwall as a breeding species at that time was incredibly rare. I think it was actually the second record ever in Berkshire to have them breeding. But yeah, I'd already started to grasp some of the basics. An idea on a Gadwall, considering I had about 200 wintering, was not a biggie for me. But for whatever reasons you want to put behind it, having had the Gadwall verified, somewhere in committee land, I clearly had some credibility. So, and I should have done, because I'd had 9 little turns on the 18th of June the previous month, but I'm not sure that information filtered out. And of course, they didn't stick around. And the only person that could vouch for me on the little turns was Mike, who, for whatever reasons, being a grown-up, me being only a teenager, no doubt brought more kudos to it. Both species made it into the bird report. And in fact, I had another little turn a month later. And this time I was on my own. And again, it was an early morning. 18th of July. I say the wind is to the west. Relatively quiet morning. A snipe, a little ring plover, green sand, common sand. All the usual expecteds. The common terns were breeding. But there I was walking around Sandford. I remember this so distinctly. And looked up. There was a little tern flying around Sandford. And I write here, flew around Sandford, not hindered by common terns from approximately 7:20 to 7:30 a.m. I also had a yellow wagtail, however. And but it was gone within 10 minutes. Nobody else saw it. But amazingly, even that made it into the bird report. So there you go. My initials in the bird report are FCO, as you can see here now. Now, let's get one thing clear. Just because one record is accepted doesn't mean the next one will be. But anyone who becomes a life birder, patcher probably more like, who stumbles across a rarity, uncommon or rarity that requires a description to be sent, that doesn't stick around long enough to be either photographed. Well, basically, if you find something rare enough that the establishment, the authorities want a description and you haven't got a means to taking a photograph, you're going to have to write a description to stand any chance of it making it into the county report. And without sounding like I'm going to get all bent out of shape about it, everybody who's been in bird watching for any length of time, who's gone to the trouble of writing a description, will at some stage have had their record rejected. And it's an interesting world and place to find yourself in, because rightly everyone would say, well, I knew what I saw. How can a bunch of people, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people, decide whether I saw something or not? But that is the way that the bird watching world works outside of your own kind of patching. So, it's not something to fear, but it's certainly something to accept that if you want to formalize records, if you're out birding actively on your own, you are going to bump into things. End of subject. So it is a personal choice. You are, in my opinion, you are not obligated to tell anyone about it. I do. But you are not obligated to submit a description. And you can make that choice whether or not you want to, and basically bypass the necessity to see it either featured in your county report, or more to the point, when it's rejected, they will often, certainly in Berkshire, make a point that whatever birds, and there's always a list of species that weren't accepted, and that's the way it is. Now, why am I telling you this? I've had quite a few things that have not passed the scrutiny of a team of people, and hilariously, in a lot of cases, I know the people involved, and you've got to sort of either disconnect yourself from the relationship you have, friends or otherwise, with a group of people when a rejection comes out. Now, do I think I've ever submitted something that I was mistaken? As it happens, no. So, having had rejections, let's do the maths here. Do I think they were mistaken, misjudged, or misguided in their opinions? I do. And I know people that share that view because they've had rejections too. Are we a bunch of babies for not having our records accepted? You can make your own choice up there. I don't really mind either way. But what I can tell you is that after a number of rejections, when things were absolutely clearly what I and myself and on occasions people with me knew to be the case, it just rubs you the wrong way in the end, and you think, well, do you know what? I don't care whether it goes into the county report. I know what I saw, and it's already on my list, and it's staying on there, and I don't give a monkey's who says anything different. Unfortunate that these things don't make it into the county report, but like a very good friend of mine, I gave up doing descriptions for rarities submissions years ago because of basically an inability to make proper judgments. And now, what I'm going to say on this is the expression "I know what I saw," is a bit of a broken record in birdwatchers, because it's easy, and it might not even feel that way for many people who don't necessarily have the experience that you can glean over a long period of time. Simply saying outwardly or to yourself, "I know what I saw," does not make a bird what you think it was. You have to basically be able to convince yourself under a stringent understanding of whether or not you have the experience with the species, or with absolutely very, very, very similar species, to being able to say, I saw things that wouldn't have been visible on the other species, similar species. So it really is a matter of how good's your knowledge, how good's your knowledge about the movement of this species, the distribution of the species, the time of year this species might be migrating. Did I need that for little tern? No, I didn't, but it blooming shocked the hell out of me to see little tern in June. I have seen 2 individual little terns since then, but never a flock, and there've been hardly any. A very good friend of mine, Adam, saw little terns at his local patch in the last couple of years, and we talked and reminisced about my flock back in 1983. So there you have it, folks. Just a little start into 1983 and an introduction to what to expect if you do see a rare bird and you are required, or not necessarily obligated, but if you feel you wish to, what to do with your record, and potentially not what to expect, but to understand that people aren't always going to believe you, and how you feel about that is entirely up to you. It doesn't take anything away from the bird being what it was, but obviously from a personal perspective, I never think I'm an expert. I always see every opportunity that I go out to experience something new, to learn, and to better my skills and my fieldcraft as a bird watcher. I'm Fraser Coddington. This is Find of the Day. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. Take care, guys.